talk to me a little bit about this territory lifestyle that you're living at the time. Not very long in Pensacola, but when you wind up going out and working for Watts for 5 months, what was protocol? Were there, like wrestler apartments and a bunch of guys just sort of piled in and covered or split expenses, or how does your living arrangement work when you're sort of fluid? You're not really here long enough for a lease or to buy a house. You're just sort of in and out, or maybe you don't even know how long you're going to be here.
Well, in those days, you would try the guys in Bill Watts territory because the drives were so long. And it was about 2,500 miles a week is what we had it broke down to. You start averaging that's pretty good trips. The guys tried to find the center point of the territory. So whatever town you lived in, it would utilize making back and forth to the trips, because you don't want to have a hotel on top of that. You always want to get home at night. Right. Even though you were on the road quite a bit. So most of the guys lived in Alexandria, which was the center point of the territory. Ted DiBiase and Tim Horner lived in Baton Rouge. Well, I didn't know. I drove out there and I didn't know what to do. It was my first territory, so I just thought, hey, I'll fill this out. So I went out there, and after about a week of just driving to the town and spending the night in a hotel, which got pretty expensive, Tim Horner came up to me and he went, hey, Tony Anthony, friend of mine, he's one of the guys, one of the grapplers, is leaving. He's going to Tennessee or Texas or somewhere. He was leaving to go to another territory. He says, I got a bedroom open. If you want to move in, you can just pick up his half of the bills, and there you go. And I think that's probably what a lot of guys did. They just would get there, find out who was on the way out or who was on the way in. And if somebody already had an apartment, he would take in one or two guys. You try to live as cheap as humanly possible, because when you were underneath and you work for a territory like Bill Watts, you're looking at $500-$600 a week in those days. And you're looking at spending quite a bit on gas. So they had it's like an unwritten law that you paid trans. If you rode with another guy in his car to the town back and forth, it was like 4 cents a mile you paid in trans. Mm. Yep. But in those days it was either that, or if you wanted to drive your own car every day, you could get that trans money. But as I found out, I blew my car up making those trips out there, loaded down with 4 wrestlers and bags. Wasn't very long, for about 3 months, I blew my engine out. So it was a lot of hours and a lot of miles and driving back and forth to the towns. But it also gave you an opportunity, if you chose to use it, to pick the brain of the veterans, those that would let you, that weren't asleep in the car,
I think the old phrase that Dusty used to use is like, sit under the learning tree. Whose tree were you under at this time, those 5 months that you're there in Watts territory?
The two biggest influences would have been Tim Horner, who I was living with, and nobody knew, because in those days you kayfabed. He was a babyface. I was a heel. You didn't live together. That was just, you protected the business. They would have fired us if they would have known that. Grizzly Smith knew it, but he kept it under his hat. Bill Watts never knew it. We were so far under the radar that we wouldn't leave the apartment except to go to the gym and go to work and come right back home. You didn't see us the rest of the day. But the big one was, for some reason, Ted DiBiase just one day asked me if I'd like to ride with him. Well, Teddy was on top. Right. He was working with, he was the man. I went, well, my God, of course I would. He had it was either a Firebird or a Trans Am, and I figured out pretty quickly why he wanted me to ride with him. He put me right behind the wheel. And before we could get out of Baton Rouge, he had that head thrown back, snoring. So I was having a great time driving a car that was a lot nicer than one I would probably own myself, certainly in those days. But I was also listening to him snore. So it was a trade out. But while he was awake, or either when he would wake up halfway to the arena, he would start to critique my matches, and I would notice he was standing by the curtain when I was wrestling. And in those days, top guys didn't do that. Right. For underneath guys. It's unheard of.
That's awesome, man. I don't know that I ever would have put two and two together that DiBiase would have been a big influence, but I appreciate everybody listening to the show today because you get little nuggets like that. So